Good evening, everyone. We are back beginning a brand new retrospective today. June 15th, 1985 was the founding of Studio Ghibli by Hayao Miyazaki. I will say, by the way, I've got to try and pronounce a lot of Japanese names in this, so bear with me. We'll get there by the end of this retrospective. And in all honesty, I haven't really seen like a big fanfare online that it's the 40th anniversary of one of the biggest animation companies there is. And we were talking about retrospectives to do, and we were talking about doing Studio Ghibli for quite a while, and we were looking at dates of when companies were founded, and quite happily we saw that it was coming up to a big anniversary midway through June. So here we are, kickstarting our Studio Ghibli retrospective with Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind, which technically isn't a Studio Ghibli film. It was made before the founding of the company, but it is. Yeah, it's sort of been drafted back into the catalogue of Studio Ghibli
It's films. More Studio Ghibli than Episode 7 is Star Wars.
Yeah. It's more Studio Ghibli than Disney's Dinosaur and what is it, The Wild, or a Disney
But there
movie.
is a relation. Mark Hamill is in it.
There is a relation as well, because Disney preside over the dubbing of the Studio Ghibli films, and from what I've heard, do a pretty damn good job of it.
Yeah, which is actually a lot better than the edited version.
Yes.
Disney did something right back in 2005.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. Yeah, this got a really, really heavily edited version, apparently, which probably is still available to watch somewhere on the internet, titled Warriors of the Wind, and it was created by Manson International, which cuts about 22 minutes out of the film in order to make it a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more marketable, I suppose. They change a lot of the characters' names as well, and I think most of the scenes they remove are the flashback scenes to Nausicaä when she was a young girl and she had this affinity for the insects. They would just remove all of that stuff out of the film. Jumping ahead a little bit, though, this is pretty badass. So there's a whole like no edits, right? No cuts policy. Did you read how they kind of reinforced that? I
didn't see how they reinforced it, but I know it's a thing.
So Harvey Weinstein, he wanted to.
Isn't it funny that his name sounds like Jeffrey Epstein, and they're both like? But anyway,
don't all good stories start with Harvey Weinstein? Like, oh god, what's he doing this time? He wanted to produce an edited version of Princess Mononoke, and I'm going to try and find out who specifically he was, but he presented him with here we go. So it was Toshi Suzuki, and he presented Weinstein with a prop katana blade with a caption on it which says Mononoke Hime, which means no cut. That's pretty badass. If you're going to issue a statement, okay, number one, if a Japanese man hands you a katana sword, that's some serious shit, okay? Even if it's a prop. And it's like, do not cut this film under any circumstances. You probably think you're going to be like assassinated or something by the Yakuza. That's good. I like that, though. And I like that they've reinforced that. And as far as I'm aware, they haven't gone back and edited any more Studio Ghibli stuff after this film. So I guess they got their way. So Studio Ghibli, I'll give my sort of introduction to Studio Ghibli if I've seen any of the films before, and then I'll hand over to you. I have seen, I think, about 6 or 7 of them. Now, this was years ago. This was probably just shy of 10 years ago, maybe, I watched these films. I watched the dubbed versions originally, and I'm aware of some of the voice cast that they use for them. I know, for example, they use Christian Bale in Howl's Moving Castle. In this film, Nausicaä, they use Uma Thurman, Patrick Stewart, and I think you mentioned Mark Hamill's in there as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm aware of that, but honestly, rewatching this again for the retrospective was basically like watching it again for the first time. I remember bits and pieces of some of these films. There's a grand majority of these films, because I think there's like 20 plus films. I think there's like 23, 25 Studio Ghibli films that I haven't seen and will be first time viewings. And even the ones that I have seen, as I've mentioned, will pretty much be discovering them for the first time. And I will say that I watched the subtitled version, and I intend to watch all of the subtitled versions for all of these films to try and keep it in the authentic language as possible. How about you? What's your history with Studio Ghibli?
Never watched a Studio Ghibli film in my life.
Wow.
until this one. This is the
And
first one.
technically,
So,
you still haven't watched a Studio Ghibli movie,
well,
technically.
yeah, technically.
So next week.
But because any anime I've been into has always been like darker, you know, bloody stuff, which is more adult and like, do you know what I mean? So that sort of thing. So it's never really like fully appealed to me properly. But yeah, so I've just never got round to it. Not that I was never going to. It just never appealed to me before, and I was just like, oh, one day. I've never been in a rush to do it. But yeah, so I don't really have a history with it.
Excellent. So we're going in pretty much
Completely
blank
brand new.
slate into a lot of these. Yeah, blank canvas, which is cool. It's nice watching new films, and especially an animation company that is so lauded. It's one of the, I'd say probably one of like the biggest powerhouses really in terms of animation, and it's just I don't know, because anime overall for me is a genre that I've never really tapped into outside of growing up with stuff like Pokemon, Digimon, the occasional bit of Card Captors or Monster Rancher. I never really watched a whole bunch of it really, and even then, the stuff that I was consuming, the stuff that I was watching, was the very edited, westernized dub stuff, which is probably so completely different from the original language and the more complete
It
story.
depends what versions you. It's really, really weird because when you look at it, there's so many different versions. Like Dragon Ball, there's like different dubs, and when I was a kid watching it, it was heavily edited. Um, and then as as time went on and they started releasing more, and I watched the sub, I watched different dubs of it as well. It was like, it wasn't as heavily edited, but years and years ago they heavily edited it quite a lot.
Yeah, so like an example of that was Card Captors, as I mentioned. Like I used to love that as a kid. Rush home from school, put CITV on, and it would always be on, and I'd absolutely love it. And then it wasn't until I was much older and I was getting a little bit nostalgic for some of these TV shows that I used to watch. I thought, you know what, I really want to watch Card Captors, and I'll do a little bit of digging, see if I can find it on the internet, read about it. And I found out that the US/UK version, which is the version that I watched, was massively cut down, immensely cut down to just really like a handful of episodes, with a lot of the main overall story and context completely removed from it. And then I kind of had a little bit of a dilemma. I was like, well, I want to watch the voices. I want to watch the show that I grew up with. But then I was also really curious about seeing something in its entirety. So I don't know. Maybe after watching all of the Studio Ghibli films, that will be more of a gateway into more anime. I know this. Yeah.
The biggest one was Yu-Gi-Oh. That was the biggest censorship, where they would have guns, but like in the dub they would change it so they just pointed their fingers at people.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and instead of like, because they couldn't, like, they wouldn't be able to talk about death. So if there was a thing where it's like you will die, they change it to you'll go to the shadow realm. And
Right.
like
Okay.
completely, which is really, really good because the very original manga of Yu-Gi-Oh had him setting people on fire and shit like that. And that is not anywhere close to what the anime that we got, especially over here, because it's like the original manga was very dark, and then they released an anime of the original manga, which was a bit watered down, and then they continued, and then the next manga was even more watered down, and then not manga, sorry, the anime was even more watered down, and then the version we got was even more watered down. So it was like it went from setting people on fire to literally just like they had to point fingers at people rather than use guns. It was mad.
I missed out on Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't know that whole phase. I never got the cards. Never watched the show. Totally
That was a
missed
good
out on
time.
it. But
That was a good time.
speaking of manga, though, I didn't know that this movie, Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind, was based on a manga of the same name, written and illustrated by the director of this film, Hayao Miyazaki. That's one of the first things that he started in. And it was a long running. I think by the time this film came out, I think he was about 16 chapters in. I'm actually not sure how long the overall thing goes on for. I think he actually finished it 10 years after this film came out. So mid 90s then by this point, because this film came out in 1984. And he was approached to make a film version of his work. And originally, I think he had some kind of clause in a contract somewhere that no one would be able to do a film version of his works, which I really like because it shows that he really cares about what he produces. And, you know, similar to a lot of authors actually have said that, you know, they kind of turn their nose up to a film adaptation. They still go ahead and make film adaptations. I mean, Tolkien famously, you know, turned down a lot of different feature film versions of his work, saying it couldn't be done. And I think that was one of the reasons Miyazaki said that it wouldn't be able to translate to a film. But when they approached him to make a film, he agreed to it, and as long as he had directorial control over it. So this is really 100% Miyazaki behind all of this. And I've never read the manga, as I've mentioned, so I don't know the overall story, but I imagine when you have a story that's so long running like that with so many different issues, and it must be very, very difficult to consolidate all that down into one single feature film of like what is going to be the core story that I am going to tell from this massive epic saga. Like, this isn't a TV show. This could quite easily work as a TV show, but you've got just shy of 2 hours to tell this massive long running story. And yeah, there's probably loads that got removed, and I actually would be curious to see what the overall story is, because I think the biggest takeaway that I have with this film is that the main thing that I really appreciate about it is the sense of world building, and this and I think this is a theme that's used in a lot of Miyazaki's films, and I'm sure we'll find out about them when we get to those films, is that it's based in a world where there's been a civilization that has fallen, and you're seeing the ruins of this older time that the characters are living amongst, and life's trying to find a way, essentially. I really like that idea. I think that's a really cool concept in the whole post-apocalyptic storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I like the world and the setting and the idea. I just thought the movie wasn't the best paced. I thought it was quite slow. It felt very bare every now and then. It felt very sort of, yeah, I don't know. It felt like it just could have been a bit snappier. Like, it was a 2 hour movie. It felt like in a lot of ways it could have been an hour and a half. You know, it could have been very sort of like, it just felt very sort of, not, okay, when I say it could have been an hour and a half, I don't mean like there was just loads of stuff that you think that didn't need to be there. But I think it just felt very sort of like, if we're going to do this and if we're going to make this long, this needs to be more exciting.
Yeah, maybe the edited version will be the one you should go for there, because that as I say, it removes 20 minutes out of it, so it will be a bit snappier. I don't really have that feeling about the film feeling bare. I don't have that, because I mean, it is set in a wasteland where you've just got a few small pockets of human civilization that's there, and you know, that there isn't necessarily like really a villain in this, which I appreciate. And I think Miyazaki mentioned that. He said that the sense of evil, if you will, is more of the like a Buddhist description of evil, or something, that it's greed, it's you know, acting out of fear and whatnot. Because if you look at all the different factions in this, you've got the Tolmekians, who are like this imperialistic, militarized empire kind of characters. But what they want to do, really, it's a good goal. You know, they're trying to preserve humanity. They feel like they've reached a breaking point. It's like, right, we need to unleash this weapon that we have, which is the Great Warrior. And then you also have the other faction. Is it Pjit? I think it's called. Who by the end of the film, they're willing to entrap the insects and put them in harm's way, but in order to divert them, or to, you know, save humanity. So when you look at their actual goals, they're not actually, there's not really any villains in this. Even like the gigantic mutant insects aren't villains in this. So I appreciate all that stuff. I think where I have a slight disconnect with this is probably the main protagonist, who it's not necessarily a bad character. I think it's just a bit, any character like this, where you just have this paragon character, a character that is loved by everyone, loved by animals, loved by people, is a complete, you know, well, you know, it's pacifist. That's totally fine. But she's so inherently, unwaveringly good that can work sometimes, but I think it can lead to a little bit of a lackluster protagonist sometimes. I do like a protagonist to have a little bit of an edge to them, and I think the only scene where that's really shown is the moment where, spoiler alert, I guess, for the film, where the Tolmekians come in and kill her father, and she sees red and she kills like a handful of the Tolmekian guards. That's quite a cool moment, and I think that's the only moment where the character really felt in any way compelling to me, because a lot of the time Nausicaä is just a nice character. I think that's maybe where the disconnect was for me.
I don't know. I like characters like that. I mean, I think she was still she was able to still come across as strong, and you know, I like characters like that are good, but they're still inherited. Because the thing is, when you have a character like that, and they're just good, but they're still strong, it kind of emphasizes their strength because they don't have that brooding kind of thing going on. So they don't need to have that to just be this strong character. They've just got, you know, just the way she is, and she's a, you know, valiant leader. But she also is like, it's that kind of character, which I guess is that kind of, you know, it's that general kind of, when I say like kids cartoon things, obviously, you know, I grew up watching, you know, this sort of stuff, you know, when I was a lot younger. So it's that kind of, so it's very relatable for me as that kids cartoon sort of thing, you know what I mean? Because it's that whole, you want a strong leader, but there's nothing bad about her. Whereas that's so like the most unrealistic thing. You know what I mean? That's the thing that I think a lot of anime does, which is great because, and that's why I like it, because it takes you away from reality. It has these very unrealistic characters who are just, you know, undeniably good, but they're a leader, where it's like, is there any leader realistically that's like that? No. But that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I think that's where we have that slight disconnect. Like, as I say, I don't dislike Nausicaä as a character. There are moments where the scene that I just mentioned, but for example, the character of Kushana, who's the strong female leader of the Tolmekians, I thought she was a much more compelling character, and I really liked her because although she was quite brutal in some aspects, you know, this tyrannical military leader, as I said, she is going about it through the right ends, and ultimately she does want humanity to survive. And I thought, oh, okay, there's more layers to this character, whereas Nausicaä is just going around being loved by everyone is amazing. They also add, and here's the thing, like traditional storytelling, I don't have a problem with it. I've got on record saying that before. I think it's because it's just a very, very tried and tested story that maybe I've seen quite a few times where it didn't really throw any surprises my way. There's Miyazaki's talked about his list of influences with this, and that there's some of the Odyssey in there, there's some Tolkien in there. A lot of people say it's very much like Dune as well, which I can absolutely see. I mean, you've got Shai Hulud in Dune, which are the giant sandworms, and in this you've got these giant like grub like cockroach kind of creatures, trilobite creatures, sorry. So I can see the elements there, and also a big one is the fact that there's a chosen one prophecy, and it's like, oh, we're doing another chosen one prophecy, and it's like the hero clothed in blue will walk among fields of gold or something like that and lead us to a better tomorrow, which happens at the end. It's of course it's Nausicaä, big spoiler alert. And
is it me, or is there always a prophecy in like most fantasy?
That's what I mean. No, and that's fine. Like I get that it is a very big trope of fantasy stuff, but it does come to a point where they go, in the ancient lore there is a prophecy of what. I'm like, oh, okay. And she gets covered all in the blue blood of the insect at the end, and she gets resurrected, and the little tendrils are like a golden field. And in case you didn't get it, the village elder is like, oh, Nausicaä was the prophesized one. She is the hero clothed in blue who will walk among fields of... I'm like, yeah, I got it. There is a lot of pointing out the obvious sometimes, and I don't know if that's just a lost in translation kind of aspect, or if maybe that is like a trope of some anime where you do get characters that just
in a lot of anime there is that sort of over the top acting and stuff, but
that's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it
because
maybe I'm just a little bit dumb, and I'm like, thanks for pointing that again.
And this is the thing, like when we get like through more of these Studio Ghibli films, as I say, I'm coming into this where I'm not really a huge anime guy. I'm very much been, I've grown up with and been exposed to Western animation and Western storytelling. This is a different form of storytelling. It's a different form of tropes and characters and the way that they interact. It's a different culture entirely. So maybe this is just something that I need to get used to, that I'm comparing it to stuff of Western culture when it isn't that. And yeah, maybe there'll be a little bit of a switcheroo later on. But just going back to that scene with Nausicaä, because we're talking about her character, that moment where she does snap and kill a lot. I do like that scene is mirrored at the end where Lord Yupa, who's a great character, by the way, he reminds me of the like the wise old sage Gandalf, Obi-Wan Kenobi type character.
He's my favorite.
He's badass.
I liked his design as well.
Yeah, he has that moment where Nausicaä essentially sees red and goes on a killing rampage after the Tolmekians kill her father, and he steps in the middle and stops the conflict. He is the pacifist in that moment, and the theme of and the ideology of pacifism is rife throughout this story. That's sort of one of the main themes of this film. And Miyazaki himself, who grew up in probably war-torn Japan and would have seen a lot of the devastation, he was a devout pacifist, and pacifism is something that is rife throughout his works. But I like how that scene's bookended. Lord Yupa stands in the middle there and says, look, squabbling over our petty differences, there will be a time to avenge your father, but we need to be sort of pulling our heads together and fixing this issue. I like stories like that. I like when there's a greater threat, like a greater existential threat, and all the petty squabblings of the different factions are just meaningless in the grand scheme of things. And it's about people coming together. That's one of my favorite, like in The Hobbit, my favorite book of all time. That's ultimately the ending of it. You've got all these people squabbling over the gold, but there's an army of orcs on the way that are probably going to kill us all. So we all need to unite against like that. I like stuff like that. So I do like that aspect to the ending. And ultimately, Nausicaä is the one who, similarly in that Lord Yupa, in that moment where he stepped in, she steps in at the end and is ultimately the one that saves the world.
It works very well in like video games and stuff, doesn't it? That sort of thing. Because like it's like Kingdom Hearts. So you've got Maleficent, and then suddenly it's like, no, there's this other person.
There's always a bigger fish.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
like Star Wars. Yeah.
Which Star Wars in turn was inspired a lot by Dune as well. You've got a chosen one prophecy in both of those as well. It's the Dune Sea, the spice miners. It's all
what? In like, I love these kind of things, but in some ways, I wish like I was born in like the 1700s and I could experience these kind of tropes for the first time and be like, oh, that's new.
Yeah.
And also because the world is so connected, like there's an idea that if someone's done, there's gonna be a way to find that idea. Like, do you know what I mean? That movie or that book or that video game, no matter how big or small it is, there's gonna be some sort of way to find it. Whereas, like, if it was at 1700s, someone could have a book, you read it, and you go, "Oh, this is amazing." Someone, like 5 other people on the planet, could have written something very, very similar, had the same idea, but you're not going to know about it yet. And so everything's quite new and surprising. Whereas now, because of the way the world is, it's just there's loads of stuff that I'm not saying isn't surprising, and people always there's always going to be turns and stuff here and there, but there's going to be a lot of stuff like, oh, I've seen that, this is like this, or there's going to be relations in a lot of things.
Yeah, and I was watching the film and I messaged you and I was like, I don't want to throw the term out Mary Sue and how it applies to Nausicaä. But there are some correlations there, I think, a little bit sometimes. I've got nothing against her, being proficient on a glider and whatnot. That's her culture. And some of the glider scenes are actually some of my favorite scenes in the film. Not for that reason, Dale. I know you called it out. I like the landscape shots. I think it's animated very, very well. But there is a lot of upskirt stuff as well, unfortunately, which comes with a lot of these Japanese animated stuff. No, but it got to the ending and she's resurrected, and of course she's our savior, and she is resurrected by the insects, and she's hailed as a god and this prophesized figure. And then I thought, oh god, I'm comparing her to Rey. She's loved by everyone. She's good at everything. Rey dies at the end and is resurrected, and I'm like, oh no. I will say Nausicaä is a much, much better character than Rey Skywalker, but still.
I feel like everyone is a better character than Rey.
Yeah. The main thing that I like about this is the world, as I mentioned. So like the characters are fine, and the story is very traditional. There's nothing wrong with that, but I love where we find ourselves in this world. And Miyazaki, his imagination was sparked. Apparently, there was an incident where there was a mercury poisoning incident in Minamata Bay, apparently, and even though the environment was poisoned by mercury, life still kind of found a way, and there was this weird beauty that emerged from this poisonous landscape. And I do like that, and that's why I chose this as the background. I will say the animation's absolutely gorgeous in this film, and that's probably something you're going to get used to, as saying, throughout all of these Ghibli films. The colors, like, it's a very different style of animation than I'm used to, but there's so much beauty in every single frame of it. I like that there's almost like a slightly different frame rate to it as well. I don't know if that's an anime thing. It doesn't look quite as fluid. Some moments do, but other times it looks slightly choppier. Not in a bad way, but I think it's just maybe it's like a different animation style.
It's like different things move as well, rather than having everything move. You have certain things. It's kind of like Snow White in comparison to Aladdin. You know, you've got like set pieces. Like there's but I'm talking about like the differences is what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I like that. It keeps the focus on the frame or like a certain aspect of it as well. But then you have moments like the Great Warrior, which is one of the most impressive parts of the animation, I think, at the very end, which is a clear allegory for nuclear warfare and, you know, like the atom bomb and things like that. This grotesque humanoid giant that emerges, and it's like all the flesh is like goopy and dripping and constantly in motion, and that was really cool stuff. That was like some cool body horror stuff. And then shoots nuclear lasers out of its mouth. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. But yeah, I like the concept of that Nausicaä is trying to find a cure. Like she's the moment where she fights she doesn't even fight it. She tries to divert the the big millipede thing at the beginning. She doesn't kill it. She's always trying to find a way to maintain that balance between everything, to try and find the good in it. As I say, a complete pacifist. And that also extends to the actual flora and fauna of the world too.
What does it remind me of? There's something where it's like only this part of the world is pure. Or something. It's like I've seen that so many times as well, and I can't think of where I'm thinking of, but like, you know, that whole like only this part of the world is pure. Whereas everything else is tainted, that sort of thing.
I mean, I was just thinking back to real world stuff like Chernobyl and, you know, things like that. I probably have seen it. I'm almost certain
I'm sure they used it in Fallout as well, where it's like, you know, radiation, but then you go somewhere, it's like the radiation isn't here. Or like Last of Us with the whole like, but Ellie can't get infected. There's always like a bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I like that she finds that through purification, these plants are gorgeous and there is a beauty to them, even though they've emerged from a toxic environment. We can make it right again. Oh god, I just thought of another Rise of Skywalker scene. There's a moment where the characters fall into quicksand and fall through the quicksand into a hidden place. That happens in both.
It was funny. It was the scene, you know, where she's sitting in like the little garden thing in the like when Thingy walks in and it's like, why, you know, it's all poisonous in here. What are you doing in here? Right? But he walks in and it takes him like 20 seconds to be like, she's like, oh, it's not tainted. It's like, oh yeah, I can breathe. It's like, you were stood there the whole time anyway. And you're like, oh yeah, I can breathe now. It's like, well, yeah.
I do like the look of stuff like that, though, because there are a lot of comparisons to World War stuff. You've got like the gas mask thing, but also the vehicles.
Which makes them look like dogs. It's like a puppy.
I'm going to have to rewatch that again with that in mind now. I didn't notice that, but a lot of people say it's steampunk, but people have called it diesel punk, how you've got a lot of these big warplanes and...
Diesel punk.
Yeah, so I like moments like that, how it harkens back to a time long since gone, because this is set, I think they say like 1,000 years after something called the 7 Days of Fire, which ravaged the world and plunged it into nuclear fallout. Essentially, I like the look of the land, how everything's ruined and everything's got, you know, foliage growing over it now, and it's almost like a burial site from an old civilization. The bones of the giant warriors litter the earth. I like, that's cool. I like stuff like that. There's games like Shadow of the Colossus, similar to that, where there's remnants of an old civilization. Same in The Hobbit. Lake Town is built on an old civilization that was once Esgaroth, which has since been destroyed. I like that, and I think that is something that is going to reoccur throughout most of Miyazaki's work, throughout the Studio Ghibli films. He also loves planes. Planes are apparently in all of the Studio Ghibli films, bar one, which is Princess Mononoke, and that's because it's set in the 14th century. But every other Miyazaki film has a plane in it.
I wonder if there's going to be a character called what's the Orville?
Orville, maybe.
Yeah, because there's always an Orville. There's always an Orville.
I'm going to check real quick. Orville.
Because Orville, the guy that made the plane. Orville and Wilbur. There's always an Orville somewhere.
It's not a very Japanese name, though, is it?
No, it's not, but... You know.
No, there isn't, apparently. So...
Well, he needs to get on that.
According to AI now, which is all over Google. There we go. Anything? I feel like there's a lot more that we can talk about this movie. Any other scenes that you want to go for in this, or characters, or moments?
I like, at the beginning where it's like, what bit is it that she takes off? The glass, like, it looks like an eye.
Oh, she takes the eye of the Ohm. Yeah,
it is an eye. Yeah. So, I really like that with the sword and the whole, like, I like, the first 20 minutes were very engaging of the movie. I think it just got quite... I mean, the thing is, I wouldn't say it's a bad movie. It's not one I wouldn't watch again. That's the thing. It's just... It was very sort of... It started off really well, and then it just kept going, but the pacing kind of felt the same. It kind of felt like, okay, let's get to something exciting. And when exciting things happened, it just didn't quite hit that level of, like, well, we've been here 40 minutes. It hasn't hit the level of excitement I wanted, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was anything completely off of it. It just, those first 20 minutes were great, and then it was like, okay, cool. And then there was another burst where it got great, where she fell into, like, the quicksand and the underground. And yeah, and then the end was cool, but it just felt like in between, it would just, I don't know how to explain it, because I wouldn't say it was filler. I wouldn't say it was very sort of like nothing happened. It just felt very sort of, it moved at a slower pace, and that's why I think a shorter movie would have... I don't think there's anything they should have cut out. I just think there was bits that were just like, okay, speed it up, if that makes sense.
Do you think maybe the story didn't justify the just shy of a 2-hour runtime, or...
Yeah, that I did think that when I watched it, but then I was like, but what bits would I cut? And I don't think there was anything that would... Kind of like, okay, let's take Star Wars Episode 1, for example. It's very slow. There's a lot going on, but it doesn't feel like any should be cut. It's kind of like this. Like, it just feels like there's things that's like, cool, that should still be happening, but it just felt like there was big gaps between those things. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's difficult to put my finger on. I mean, I suppose, well, we're just going to need to watch more of these Studio Ghibli films and see how it stacks up. This is regarded as one of the best, I think.
Well, the next one's over 2 hours, isn't it?
I don't know. It's Castle in the Sky, isn't it?
I looked at the runtime. I think it's over 2 hours.
Oh, wow. Strap yourself in for that one then. But yeah, I don't know anything about that one, so we'll see. But it'll be interesting to see how these all stack up at the very end. I did want to mention as well in that, the music, yeah. So one thing that I'm going to love is the soundtracks to all of these. I have been listening to piano covers of a lot of the Studio Ghibli stuff over the last couple of weeks, and it's absolutely gorgeous music. So I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of the name. I'm sorry, I'll try and find the actual pronunciation for next time. I think it's Joe Hisashi. I'm going to go with that. I'm probably butchering it completely. I think he does a lot of the music to the Studio Ghibli stuff, and it's a great soundtrack. It's a very inconsistent soundtrack, though, I think, in terms of the sound of it. So you have this beautiful, emotional, sweeping, string-orientated melody that is Nausicaä, the Valley of the Wind's main theme, which is beautiful. And then you have it reminds me of the Transformers the movie from the 80s. That may have actually come out in 84. I can't remember which year in the 80s it came out.
It doesn't remind you of The Touch.
Well, it's that very minimalist sort of like tech demo drum loop, like 80s backing beat kind of thing to a lot of it, which is fine, and I love that stuff, but it just didn't mesh with the beautiful sweeping string melody. I'm not going to say it's awful. It's quite understated in some points, and there's even big chunks where there is no music, when a lot of the action's playing out and a lot of the violence, you do really just get the sound of the environments or the wind rushing over the valley, or towards the end of the film when, all hell's breaking loose, essentially, the lack of the wind and the lack of the sound, the silence, the stillness of the landscape. So I think he knows when to pull the music back and whatnot, but it's really just that main theme for me that sticks with me. That's gorgeous. Everything else is just sort of like this dum 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 dum, like this 80s sort of, as I say, like it feels like you've got a keyboard from the 80s and there's like a play demo on there. You hit that, that's sort of what the soundtrack feels like to me. It's very Vince DiCola from the Transformers the movie, which isn't a bad thing. I think it's just not in keeping with the main theme at the beginning. Personally.
I get what you mean. It's interesting though, because it's like like Dragon Ball GT is a very good example of something that did that, where the music was very a certain way, and then the Japanese version of the music was completely different.
Yeah.
Like it was just very sort of like there were these heavier guitars, and then you go to like the Japanese version and it was just happier music the whole time. It was just, but it worked.
And you also have there's like a vocal song, isn't there, that sang over the opening titles of this.
Oh right, yeah.
Where they say,
I thought it was still on Dragon Ball, for example.
No, sorry. So it's like the title theme song, and I know that is a very anime thing as well. You watch anime shows, there's like this completely like bombastic opening intro, and then maybe like a very, very poppy, doesn't really seem like it fits end credits song that'll play sometimes over some anime. Do you know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? Like it's just yeah. So there was some of that in this, and again, maybe. Yeah.
It's kind of, but the thing is that works. It's kind of like in horror movies where the killer always listens to classical music.
Yes.
Like classical music is always played over. So yeah, it's that kind of thing, isn't it?
There is a bit in this film that there's the classical song where it goes like dun 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 dun. That plays in this. I was recording a voice message to you at the time, and it was playing. I thought, oh, he's using like a snippet of classical music here, and then it moved into something different. I was like, you stole those few bars from whatever that classical song is. I don't know the name of the actual classical piece. I should, but I don't know what it is. I thought the glider stuff was cool. I like that we have this like high tech stuff. Apparently they have built a glider that functions. It's a functional glider, a functional jet powered glider modeled after this film, which is pretty cool. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. So yeah, I think just sort of like rounding off for me, I guess, with this one is that the stuff that I appreciate the most about this is the world building, is the setting, is this history and all these different factions. And I can only imagine that in the manga, that's just, fleshed out even more. It would be like going, right, we've got the Lord of the Rings, we've got all of this history, and we're going to make a 2-hour movie on it. That's how I imagine it's the same thing with this one as well. But I think he kept the focus where he needed to. I don't know what stuff got removed that's in the manga, so I think that what he was able to consolidate into a feature film functions as a story. I think maybe, reading it would enhance the experience of this film in some way too. I like all the themes with it. However, the themes are very traditional. They are quite tried and tested. And that's just the fact that I know this came out in 1984. I have seen a lot of stories similar to this. I can see where all the influences have come from, and maybe that is where the disconnect of this film is coming from slightly. It's the 2-hour runtime of a story that I've seen told many times. But is this story told very well? Yeah, I think it's done exceptionally so. I don't think the characters are the most interesting. I think they are really totems. You have that theme of pacifism, which is personified in the Nausicaä character, and she doesn't really go beyond that for me. So there's a few drawbacks there to some of the characterization, but in terms of the animation, this is just absolutely stellar. And to come out swinging with this film as your first feature, off the back of this film, we got Studio Ghibli. Without this film, we wouldn't have Studio Ghibli. So this film is immensely important. It's regarded as one of the best by a lot of people. And yeah, I can understand why it gets the love. I think the themes in this are very important and are very nice, and I think they're well handled. I think they're artistically handled as well. But yeah, I think we will have better Studio Ghibli movies that show up. I'm confident to say that as we get further into this retrospective.
Yeah. Kind of like Pinocchio in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
Where
I guess so.
like,
Check out our tier lists.
Where it's like, but there are better ones, isn't there?
I think historically it's probably, I think I may have already mentioned this in our review, but the fact that Miyazaki does use so many strong female characters in that culturally Japan is very patriarchal. So I imagine, especially in 1984 as well, the fact that you have a character like Nausicaä, eventually you have characters like Princess Mononoke, that is probably a big deal. And whilst I don't think Nausicaä is the most compelling of characters, I think it is worth noting that we have to sort of put ourselves in the headspace of Japan as a culture and the media that was coming out at the time. So yeah, probably a ballsy move doing that, and something a bit different, certainly for the time.
Do you know what? We need something where it's just like a giant spider is the main character, because that's the thing people don't like is spiders.
And we're gonna. Well, what about Charlotte's Web? Does that? Oh no, that's technically the pig, isn't it? Everyone loves pigs. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, actually, where is the main character of Spider?
Spider-Man?
Yeah,
no, not quite. Not quite. Main character of Spider. Hang on, I've got you. Hang on.
Gotta be something.
Stories where the main character is a spider. There was an old TV show, like an old kids TV show, where it was like a spider. It was done this like really rough. See, Charlotte's Web's the first thing that's coming up.
Yeah, but it doesn't count. Doesn't count.
There's apparently a novel called Spider, a novel. So maybe that. Yeah, don't know. Interesting.
There was one I read called Spid the Spider when I was a kid. That was about a spider. So they do exist.
They do. Anything further to add to Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind? Would you recommend this to someone who hasn't seen it before?
Yeah, I would recommend it. It's good. It's a good movie. I just think it's not like, I just think it's quite long. I do just think it's quite long for what it is. But yeah, but I do think it's a good movie overall. Something
I think we'll get used to as well, and I certainly know that Princess Mononoke does this as well. It's a PG, but the level of violence is pretty up there, isn't it? The bit where she like gets gunned down at the end,
yes.
And there's people get killed in this. There's people getting stabbed. There's blood. There's gunshots and violence. Yeah, but I think that definitely makes it a lot more impactful. I like that it doesn't shy away from that, and it's.
I know Pocahontas should have looked at this.
You wait till we get to Princess Mononoke. We've got decapitations, we've got severed limbs, we've got torrents of blood, and it's a PG. It's great.
Well, Pocahontas should have looked at this and been like, right, that's what we need to do.
Were you getting kind of Pocahontas vibes a little bit in some aspects of this? Yeah. The whole bit where Pocahontas runs in at the end before her father kills John Smith, and she's like, "Look around you. We need to come together and listen to the Valley of the Wind, the Colors of the Wind." Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a little bit, not that much, but
she's got the animal sidekick.
Calls them savages, and I was like, Pocahontas.
She's got like the little Pikachu fox squirrel sidekick, the cute little animal sidekick thing. She talks to the animals.
Now, though, isn't it? There's always a little cute sidekick.
Yeah, the theme of nature and humanity's place in nature, and that one isn't better than the other, and it needs to find that delicate balance of the two. We've seen that done a lot, but I do like themes like that. That's a lot of Tolkien stuff right there coming through as well, sort of like nature fighting back, and you can't stop nature. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. It was nice going back to this one. As I say, watching this again, it was like watching it for the first time. I think the only things that I remembered the first time was the voice cast of the English dub. I think going forward, I am going to stick with the Japanese language because of the 7 Studio Ghibli films that I watched the first time round, it was all the dubbed version. So I think just for something a bit different, just culturally different as well, I'm going to watch it in Japanese. You watched it with the dubbed, but you had the subtitles from the Japanese version right over the top of it.
Yeah. So I saw the differences. Like the Sea of Decay was renamed something in the dub version. I don't remember what, to be fair, because I was reading along, and also I do think the subs like it was more impactful. I did prefer it, but there wasn't loads of differences. There wasn't loads and loads. But yeah, I mean, I watched it with I like to say with the subtitles on because yeah, I was just like I'll see what that's like. See, but it was really weird reading it because usually, like if I watch anime, it's either one or the other. I don't usually do that. So it was interesting to read that and be like, that's just a little bit different. It was weird, but yeah, no, I enjoyed watching it like that.
I think for the most part, the dubbed versions are very well handled. Disney's presiding over them, and I know that we call Disney out for a lot of shit, but they do a pretty bang up job of the dubbed versions. Yeah, we'll see how we go. So we've got that frame of comparison. Okay, so our next one is going to be Castle in the Sky, which I know absolutely nothing about. As I say, a lot of these I'm going into completely cold. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're going to be probably back next Sunday as well. We'll talk about it in case we have to change that, but we're probably going to shoot for next Sunday. After that, we're going to revert back to our Mondays every single week. So yeah, if you like Studio Ghibli, spread the word because we are going to be here for a good amount of weeks. We've got a lot of films to get through. We're going to go through one a week, so we should be done, I think, like the first week of December if we stay on track. So in the meantime, let us know your thoughts on Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind. Let us know some of your favorite Studio Ghibli movies, which ones you're looking forward to seeing, because yeah, we're going to be discovering a lot of these for the first time. So please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. I'm going to be live again tomorrow with JX Editor. We're continuing our Superman retrospective. I've got like 3 retrospectives on the go at the moment, or soon to be 3. So my mind's like, oh, what have I got coming out? Superman 3, which is meant to be where they start to suck. So
I've not seen Superman 3.
Neither have I. I'm going to be watching it tomorrow morning.
Superman 4.
I haven't watched that. So 3 and 4 I stayed away from. So it's going to be very interesting.
It was fun.
Quest for Peace. So yeah, Superman 3 tomorrow evening, and yeah, a lot of other stuff planned, trying to get a lot more movies in if I can. Thank you to everyone who's watched, and hopefully we build this community up as we keep going through this retrospective. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.